Om Ajnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Padamayyam Dadati Swapadantigam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamsha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauravishe Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namosute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So welcome all the devotees for this Bhakti Shastri session. So far we have covered the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and now we'll be entering into the 14th chapter. So we saw in the previous chapter, especially in the last section, from 27 to 35, which talked about the Jnana Chakshu, wherein we saw that how from everything is combination of matter and spirit was explained in verse number 27. Then in 28 we saw that how we can get the equality of the vision, and then we understood that the spirit is non-doer and soul is transcendental, na karoti, na lipyati, that was talked in verse number 32. And then 33 and 34 explained how it is na lipyate and na karoti, how the soul is transcendental. And finally, in the last verse, it mentioned that one will attain liberation by Jnana Chakshu. So, Nirgunatvat was the word which was used by the Lord. And in the verse number 22 of the 13th chapter, we saw that Krishna has already given the seed for all the further chapters. So, Prakrute Purushasthohi Bhungte Prakriti Janguna. Purusha Prakrutistohi Bhungte Prakriti Janguna. Karanam Guna Sangosya. So, based on that, we had that time had a discussion that here Krishna has just mentioned that Guna Sangha, that association of modes, and what it is, how the soul is actually Nirgunatvat, how the soul is actually the transcendental to the modes, will be explained in this particular chapter. So, modes of the three modes, especially of the material nature, are actually not the cause of bondage. The desire of the living entity is the real cause of the bondage. Whatever desires he keeps, that causes the further bondage. But the desires of the living entities are executed through the modes, and that's how they help rather they are in one sense helpful in keeping the soul bound. So in one sense we can say that these three modes are a mechanism by which soul is bound. And that mechanism Krishna will be explaining in this particular chapter for all of us. We can also see that in the previous sections, especially in the first 6 chapters, it is mentioned that one may be doing his duty, is a matter of karma yoga, but one should learn to be detached. And in that sense of detachment, one should perform one's duty. And here it will be explained, especially in this particular chapter, that how the bondage itself takes place. So this is how this chapter will be explaining us about the modes of material nature. And Srila Prabhupada has entitled this chapter 14 as the 3 modes of material nature. Guna, yeah. So then let's have a quick overview of this. So I'll just share the screen. Can the screen sharing be enabled, please?
You should be able to share the screen, Prabhuji. It should be enabled.
It's said that host disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh, okay. Lilan Prabhu? Hare Krishna, Lilan Prabhu.
Somebody can give a call, something like that.
Yeah, Prabhuji, sure.
Yeah, I'm giving call, Prabhuji.
So verse number 1 to 13, it will be talking about how the soul is conditioned by the modes. And then from 14 to 18, the effect of this kind of conditioning, that modes is...
Prabhuji, please try now. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Sorry, sorry, Prabhuji, you can try now.
Yeah. You are all able to see this?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhu.
So the first section talks about how the soul is conditioned by the modes. That is from verse number 1 to 13. And then from verse number 14 to 18 is the effect of conditioning of the modes. And lastly, from 19 to 27, transcending the modes. So this is a brief overview of the whole chapter, just the 3 sections, but we can see that number of verses in the first and the third section are a little bit more. Yeah. So now let's go and see what is the further subsections from 1 to 13. So section 1 and 2, verse number 1 and 2, it will be talking about the glorification of knowledge about the modes. And then 3 and 4 is how the soul comes in contact with matter. How the soul comes in contact with matter. And 5 to 9 is how the modes binds the soul. And finally 10 to 13 is identifying the mode that bind us by principal characteristics. Actually the spelling is mistake here. Principal, P-A-L, it should be. Principal characteristics. Yeah. So this is a brief subsection of the first section. So now let us go to the first verse. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Shri Bhagavan Vacha.
Shri Bhagavan
Param bhuya pravakshyami
Param
Pravakshami
jnanam jnanamuttamam
Jnananam Jnanam Uttamam
yajñatva munaya sarve
Yajna
Jnanam Sarve
param siddhim ito gataha.
Param
Param
Siddhimito
Siddhim Ito
Gata.
Gata.
Translation?
Hare Krishna. Can I-
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Again I shall declare to you this supreme wisdom, the best of all knowledge, knowing which all sages have attained the supreme perfection." Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So here we can see Krishna is glorifying this kind of knowledge. That what is the effect of this knowledge? That if you know this, then or there are people who have previously learned this knowledge and they have attained supreme perfection. So many, it is mentioned, many. Yajñatva munaya sarve param siddhim ito gataha. Param bhuya pravakshyami. I am explaining you. So here the word bhuyaha means again. So bhuyaha means again. So again I am explaining you. Param bhuyaha pravakshyami. Jnananam jnanam uttamam, which is nothing but the best of all knowledge. So now one may think, how is it already Krishna has, first thing we can see that Krishna has this way of explaining things, of giving the importance of thing what he is going to say, which was also very well explained in the 7th chapter and 9th chapter. In the beginning, Krishna glorified what he is going to speak about. Like in 9th we see Rajavidya Rajagoyam, Pavitram idam uttamam. So like that, here also Krishna is now speaking about the glorification or glorifying this knowledge which he is going to give. So that's the first thing to understand. And second thing is that the word bhuya means previous, again. So again I am explaining, and again it is mentioned that this is a superior knowledge. So how to reconcile these two things? At one point it is saying that it is mentioned again, another time it is mentioned that it is superior knowledge. So point is that when it is mentioned again, means Krishna is repeating something. So if Krishna is repeating something, means already he has spoken something which is superior to that. So then no need to again say that this is superior. So we can see that by gaining this knowledge, this section, again we have to understand the whole section of 13 to 18 chapter is section of Jnana, and this Jnana section is supposed to culminate into Bhakti. The person who is inclined to have knowledge, or Jnana, so the culmination of that is devotional service, or should be devotional service, and that is the perfection of attaining Jnana. And that is what we can see here. Yad jnatva munayah sarve param siddhim ito gataha. Now many times Krishna has used the word bhakta, but here Krishna is using the word munaya. So why the word munaya? Because we can see that this is a section of Jnana wherein the philosophers who are trying to understand the Supreme Absolute are seeking this kind of knowledge, and when they get this kind of knowledge, then what happens? They come to the understanding, oh, I am transcendental to the material nature, so I must get rid of this material nature. That is what they understand. Then they understand I am even transcendental to the three modes, nirgunatva. So that means I should even go beyond that. And in the process of this, then when they are trying to accept the process of liberation, they understand that actually devotional service is the best means of attaining liberation. Devotional service is the best means to go beyond the modes, is the best means to go to free the all kind of bondage which are there to the soul. And there, that is how they take to devotional service. So there's a big difference. Though somebody taking to devotional service by getting attracted to the beauty of Krishna, attracted to the various qualities of Krishna, and here somebody is getting to the devotional service for getting liberation. So there is a big gulf of difference. But anyways, that does not anyway disqualify these munis to attain finally the same destination as those devotees who are getting attracted. So that is why it is mentioned by Krishna here that they have attained Param Siddhi. They have come to that level. Finally, they have understood the performance of devotional service is important, and they have taken it up. And eventually, if there was good fortune for them, they might have even understood the best form of devotional service, or Uttama Bhakti, as which has been very well explained by Srila Prabhupada to the mercy of Rupa Goswami in the Nectar of Devotion. If that one comes to know, then that is Uttama Bhakti. So like that. But the point is that through this kind of knowledge, also one may culminate in devotion. And actually that is a means, or that is the real goal of Jnana, to reach to the platform of devotional service. But those people who remain only on the level of Jnana, for them the perfection becomes the Brahman realization. But for bhaktas, the perfection is spiritual world or devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Like that. Okay, so now let's go to the second verse. Idam jnanam upashritya
Idam jnanam upasritya
mama sadharmyamagataha
Sadharmyamagata
sargeti nopajayante
Jayante
pralayena vyathanti cha. Yeah, translation.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, please go ahead.
Word Mataji.
Yeah, you carry on, Prabhuji.
Okay, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. By becoming fixed in this knowledge, one can attain to the transcendental nature like my own. Thus established, one is not born at the time of creation or disturbed at the time of dissolution. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you. So actually, I was thinking about this reading, translation, and purports. There's some delay in that because devotees are quite merciful in giving the chance to others and all that thing. So if I don't know whether it is possible, but they can allot some roll number or something in the participant list, and then by that number we can just keep reading, sequentially. So then there is a continuous flow of that. So whatever it can work out, but if it goes like this also, I have no issue. Just small input. So here we see that Lord Krishna is now again telling the second point about this jnanam, that idam jnanam upashritya. This is a very, very important word which Krishna is using, upashritya. Tepi anti paramgati. There is one verse in Bhagavad Gita. Sti Shudras Tatha Tepi anti Mami Partha Vyapashritya. That is, So in a similar way, here it is Krishna is saying upashritya. So one who has taken shelter of what? Of Krishna? No. Here Krishna is talking about idam jnanam. one who has taken shelter of this knowledge. So generally what happens, a person acquiring knowledge, if he is not in his clear consciousness, if he is not having pure intentions, then sometimes he is in the spirit of controllership. When he gets a kind of knowledge, then he feels, oh yes, I am someone now who knows things much better than others, and that is how I can be a better controller now. So it's like kind of a intellectual supremacy over others, as we can see in the pastime of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when that Keshav Kashmiri had come to Navadvip. So he had this kind of mentality in his mind that he's a Digvijay, that all 10 directions he has conquered, and there is no one better than him. And when with simple thing, when he was defeated by Nimai Pandit, he was devastated. So the point here Krishna is saying that idam jnanam upashritya, that one should learn to get rid of this. One should learn to get rid of this controller mentality even while one is acquiring jnana. It is very, very important. Not that by acquiring jnana one should intend to become a superior person than others. So even as we are now pursuing Bhakti Shastri, so the goal of this is not to become better learned than others, but rather to go in deep within our hearts to find out where we are based on what knowledge we are getting. And actually this knowledge which one gets can help to relieve or remove various kinds of doubts and misconceptions that we may carry for over lifetimes. And that is why we should learn to take shelter of the knowledge and not only seek the knowledge to become a better person than other. So the example can be given, if there is a, like, king has a crown, big crown, but if that crown is worn by the king or even any one of us, it will never protect us from the rain. So similarly, knowledge, if it is going to be only a crown of our false ego, then that will not going to help us to actually what we say, get rid of or be secured when there are some situations like rain. So rain means there are so many changes in the dualities and so many things happening in the material world. So then we will not be saved in that situation if we are just trying to ornament our false ego with the help of knowledge. So that's why we should learn to take shelter of the knowledge. So one should not be in a mood of controlling or conquer over Krishna through Gyan, through this knowledge. But rather Krishna is, through this word Upashitya, he is trying to tell us that we should ourselves give to this knowledge and to Lord Krishna. So by how, what are there are various ways by which we can give ourselves to Krishna, and one of them is through the intellect. So Krishna also says in, I believe in 18th chapter, that one who worships him with intelligence is also a devotee, something like that. I'm just paraphrasing it. So that is what this word is of very importance, prime importance. Idam jnanam upashritya, that we have to take shelter of this knowledge. And then what happens by that? Mama sadharmyam agataha. If we really take shelter of this knowledge, then we will achieve sadharmyam. So we know this verse in Bhagavatam, salokya sarshti samipya sarupte katvam apyuta diyamanam na brunanti vinamat pada sevanam jana. So this verse explains that there are various kinds of liberation. Salokya means same loka as that of Lord Krishna. Sa lokya. Sa rupya. Similar form as that of Lord Krishna, as in Vaikuntha. So sarshti, similar opulence as that of Lord Krishna. Samipya, closeness to the Lord. So like that here the word has come sadharmyam, means same dharma as that of Lord. So dharma means constitutional position. So one may say that Lord has a constitutional position of a supreme enjoyer. So does that mean that we will also be supreme enjoyer? No. Sadharma means just like Lord is always situated in his dharma of being a supreme enjoyer, similarly we will be also be situated in our dharma of being a servant, eternal servant. So that is what we can see. And this word dharma is in that sense because we see this word dharma being used in various places in Bhagavad Gita, especially in the 4th chapter. We see dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge, Krishna says. So there Krishna is intending towards basically the social structure of the society. That is what is talked about the dharma over there. Or in 18.66 when Krishna is saying sarva dharman parityajya, that you give up all kind of lower dharmas and accept this highest dharma of bhakti. But here Krishna is saying mama sadharmya, that you will attain your eternal position of being a servant of the servant, like that. And sarge api nopajayante pralaye na vyathanti cha. So when one takes such shelter of this knowledge and attains his eternal position, means one has gone beyond the bodily concept of life. Only then one can be situated in his eternal position of being servant of the servant. And when one has gone beyond the bodily concept of life, then what is the result of that? Sarge api nopajayante. Means at the time of creation, one will not take birth because he has gone beyond the bodily concept. So there is no birth for him. Or one is not disturbed by the dissolution. That means when the dissolution is there, so probably before that only he has already attained the spiritual world. So there is no disturbance to him for because of the dissolution. Or it can also mean that even if dissolution takes place, he will not be disturbed by that. Yes, somebody can read the first paragraph of the purport.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, and read. After acquiring perfect transcendental knowledge, one acquires qualitative equality with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, becoming free from the repetition of birth and death. One does not, however, lose his identity as an individual soul. It is understood from Vedic literature that the liberated souls who have reached the transcendental planes of the spiritual sky always look to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, being engaged in his transcendental loving service. So even after liberation, the devotee do not lose their individual identities.
Yeah, so this is what I was telling about sadharmyam, qualitative equality with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then becoming free from repetition of birth and death means then there is sarge api nopajayante pralate na vyathanti cha. So this is what is explained over here. Yes, let's go to the third verse. So now from this verse number 3 to 5, we will be seeing that how soul gets contact with matter. Mama yonir mahad brahma tasmin garbham dadamyaham ambhava sarva bhutanam tato bhavati bharata. Krishna?
Translation: the total material substance called Brahman is the source of birth, and it is that Brahman that I impregnate, making possible the births of all living beings, O son of Bharata.
Thank you. So the word Brahma, as we discussed that many times, that in Sanskrit the word is used at a different location with different connotation. So here the word Brahma is referring to material nature. Mama yonir mahat Brahma. So Krishna is talking this yoni, that the material nature is the womb, and in that tasmin garbham dadamyaham, I am giving the seed within that garbha. So like that we can see here. So word Brahma here refers to material nature. And what happens by that? Sambhava sarva bhutanam tato bhavati bharata. By that all living beings take birth, making possible the birth of all living beings. So we can see that right from the beginning of creation, there is a role of Krishna to play, and very vital role. So past two verses we saw that Krishna glorified this knowledge about the three modes and attracted the attention of Arjuna. And now he has began with the fact that from where these living entities have come in contact with the matter, so that Krishna has given them. So we know that at the time of dissolution, or at the time of end of the creation, what happens is all the souls enter into the body of Mahavishnu. And then later on, when the creation is taking place, at the beginning of the creation, the souls are again injected back into the material nature Prakriti, which is referred to here as Mahat Brahma. So how it is done? So there are in Vedanta Sutras and other Upanishads, there are some references about that, or a short verses about that, like based on why the living entity again takes another birth at the time of creation is Sakamyata, means because of his desire. Now because of his desire, what happens? Srijjata. And Krishna creates again material nature, because there are desires of living entities unfulfilled till now. So then Sa Asrijjata, he again creates. And how does he create? Sa Aikshata. That just by his glance, he injects all the living entities back into the material nature, womb of material nature. So this is what we can see. So essentially Krishna is again saying that I am the seed giver in the womb of the material nature. Now next verse, before that we'll read the purport. Can somebody read this? Very wonderful way Srila Prabhupada has put it.
The scorpion lays its eggs in piles of rice, and sometimes it is said that the scorpion is born out of rice. But the rice is not the cause of scorpion. Actually, the eggs were laid by the mother. Similarly, material nature is not the cause of the birth of all living entities. The seed is given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they only seem to come out as a product of material nature. Thus, every living entity, according to his past activities, has a different body created by his material nature, so that the entity can enjoy or suffer according to his past deeds. The Lord is the cause of all. The Lord is the cause of all manifestations of living entities in this material world.
Thank you. So it may happen that the apparent source is material nature, but actually that is not the real source. The real source is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which Srila Prabhupada is explaining to this example of scorpion. That he lays his eggs in the pile of rice, and one may say, oh, so many scorpions are born from the rice. But that's not the real fact. The real source is the mother who has laid the eggs. So similarly, although it may appear that living entities are taking birth from material nature, but the real seed giving is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. This is very important to understand because there is some sect of people in this world who say that Ma, Durga Ma is the whole and soul, the topmost personality, and we are all her products. So yes, that is one way true, but that's not the ultimate truth. Because the ultimate truth is that Krishna is a seed giving person, father. Yes. Now let's go to next verse. Sarvayonishu Kaunteya
Sarvayonishu Kaunteya
Murtaya Sambhavantiya
Murtaya
Bhavantiya
Tasam Brahma Mahadyonir
Tasam
Brahma Mahadionir
Aham Bija Pradapita.
Aham Bija Pradapita.
Translation.
Krishna Prabhu. It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving father.
So it seems quite similar, the previous verse and this verse. Like the third verse, we see where Krishna is saying that the total material substance called Brahman is the source of birth, and it is that Brahman that I impregnate, making possible the birth of all living beings. And here also Krishna is saying that all species of life are made possible by the birth in this material nature, and I am the seed giving father. So it's almost one and the same thing. But we can see that in the previous verse, the focus is that the Lord is the ultimate cause of living beings. That was more like as we saw through the example of scorpion. So Lord is the ultimate cause of the birth of living entities in the material world, was the main emphasis in that verse. Whereas in this verse, the emphasis is how the living entities are taking birth is by the grace of the Lord, when the Lord puts that seed. So almost one and the same, but I hope you are making the difference, that there it is mentioned that material nature is not the ultimate cause. The ultimate cause is the Supreme Lord. And here all the living entities which are taking birth, the seed giving is a Supreme Lord. That is what is mentioned. So here, in essence, it is not that Krishna is talking about birth of any person. This is about all living entities at the time of creation. That also we have to understand. Obviously, this is common for both the verses, but just making the point that this is at the time of creation. What happens is what is explained over here. So let's read one paragraph from the purport. Yes, somebody can read this.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. In this verse, it is clearly explained that
the one which I have projected on the screen.
Okay, Prabhu. Everywhere there are living entities. Within the earth, there are living entities. Even within water and within fire. All these appearances are due to the mother, material nature, and Krishna seeds giving process. The purport is that the material world is impregnate with the living entities who come out in various forms at the time of creation according to their past deeds.
So this also we discussed in our previous sessions, that how based on their past deeds, they are getting a particular type of body at the time of creation. And then further, what kind of activities they do based on their past deeds, and what kind of desires they harbor in that particular life decides their future life. So like that here it is mentioned. Yes, now let's go to the 5th verse. So from the verse number 5 to 9, we will be seeing that how the modes will bind the soul. Tattvam rajastama iti
Sattvam
Sattvam
Rajastama
Rajastama iti
Guna Prakriti Sambhava
Guna prakriti sambhava
Sambhavaha
Nibadhanti Mahabaho
Bandhanti Mahabaho
Dehe Dehinam Avyayam.
Dehe Dehinam Avyayam.
Yeah. So here Krishna is telling Sattvam, Rajas, Tama. There are three modes: Sattva, Raja, and Tama. Iti. Gunaha Prakriti Sambhavaha, which are born from material nature. Prakriti Sambhavaha. And what does these three modes do? Nibadnanti. Nibadnanti Mahabaho. Dehe Dehinam Avyayam. So, although the living entity is eternal, Dehinam is the word used for the living entity who is transcendental. And now, right now, he is in the Dehe. Right now, he is in the body. So, Nibadnanti Mahabaho Dehe Dehinam Avyayam. So, he is bound because of these three modes into the body. The living entity, who, however, he is very great. By addressing Arjuna as Mahabaho, Krishna is pointing out that living entity is very powerful. But because of these three modes which are born from material nature, he is bound in the body. So this is what is mentioned over here. However great he may be, however powerful the person may be. So now one point of discussion can be that what are these three modes actually? Are they real things, or they are simply the concept mentioned to make us something understand? So according to Krishna's explanation, we can understand that they are real things, not simply the concepts. So what is this real things? But they are real things, but they are not gross things. That is a very difficult situation. They are subtle things. Like we see that right now I have kept this laptop on one table, which I can see, which I can perceive through my senses, which I can touch. So that's why the gross things are very easy to understand, very easy to perceive. But subtle things are very, very difficult. So these three modes, they are actual things, but they are subtle. Then one may question, so what is the way of knowing them? Can we know or not? So yes, we can know it if we are able to harmonize our understanding based on what Krishna is teaching. If we are able to uplift our consciousness above the gross level, only then we can understand it. So just like we see that in a particular part of the land, there may be gold mine below. So from the external appearance of the land, we cannot know that there is gold below. Or there is a gold mine, or there is a gold. Now, whether the gold is there or not, yes, it is there. It is real thing. It is not simply a conceptual that, oh, there may be gold or there may not be gold, there must be gold, nothing like that. Gold is actually there. It's a real thing. But one may then question how I can access that gold. So yes, you have to dig a hole, go to the mine below, and then you will be able to access that gold. That means there's a process for that. So similarly, the existence of the modes. Now the problem here is we gave just the example of gold to make us only understand one thing, that to process to know the gold which is below the earth, the method to know the gold, there is some process, by which one can understand it and one can actually procure it. But the problem here is that gold is gross, again, whereas modes are subtle, So gross things like table and chair and laptop, which are so easy to perceive, that can be to some or the other extent we can manipulate, But what about the subtle things like this 3 modes? So then, unless we uplift our consciousness above gross things, we will not be able to actually understand the subtle nature of the modes. So this is what is a very, very important thing to understand. So here Krishna is giving us this knowledge in this particular chapter to help us actually see how the modes are acting, and how if we uplift our consciousness, like we see the last section of this chapter itself is talking about transcending the 3 modes. So when we actually uplift our consciousness, only then we can understand the subtleties of these modes and how they are working, how they are acting, and then there is a hope of transcending it. Only when we understand it, then we can transcend it. Without that, how can we expect? So this is how the soul is bound in this material world by the 3 modes which are born out of the material nature. Yeah. Now we'll go to next verse. Tatra sattvam nirmalatvat prakashakam sukha sangena badhnati jnana sangena chanagha.
O sinless one, the mode of goodness, being purer than the others, is illuminating, and it frees one from all sinful reactions. Those situated in that mode become conditioned by a sense of happiness and knowledge.
So here now Krishna will explain from 6, 7 and 8. These 3 verses, Krishna will give us a brief introduction about these modes. So as it is very clear from this verse that Krishna is introducing to us the mode of goodness. So tatra sattvam nirmalatvat. So this sattva gun is nirmal, very pure. Just like we see Bhagavatam we call as Amala Puran, spotless Puran. So like that, nirmalatvat, sattva gun or the mode of goodness is very pure. Prakashakam, it is enlightening, illuminating or enlightening. And anamayam, it's free of all sinful reactions. But what is the problem? Sukha sangena badnati, jnana sangena chanadha. But one is, even in this mode, one becomes conditioned by the sense of happiness and knowledge. So here we see that even the mode of goodness, which is so pure, so illuminating, so enlightening, is also causing the bondage. Now these 3 modes, or we can see that when we choose that particular thing, then one starts acting in accordingly that way. And then the consequences are according to that thing. But one who is seeker of knowledge, one who is in this kind of mode of goodness, so what happens is he is more concerned about the consequences of his actions, or we can say that he is always worrying what will be the consequences of this particular kind of action. And that's why he chooses his action based on the analysis of the consequences. So he is quite thoughtful about that thing, and in that way then he makes his choices, and accordingly then he is always in a situation where he happens to be happy because he chooses thoughtfully. But the point is he gets bound by that. Means what? Means he chooses his path in such a way that he gets right situations or right consequences out of that, and then he feels pleasure with that, and he feels that I am doing good, and because of that he never feels that there is some problem in the material world, or because of that knowledge he always feels that I am already knowledgeable person, what else there is to be attained. In that way he gets bound. So sukha sangena badnati jnana sangena chanaga. So although there may be because jnana, when one gets jnana, then there are less miseries, because he always chooses the right thing, so one may experience happiness. But again, as Krishna is mentioning, that is also binding the person. Srila Prabhupada many times gives us this example of person bound by the gold shackles. So somebody is bound by the gold shackles, but at the end of the day he's bound only. It's not that he is free. Even if the shackles may be gold, made out of gold, but he is bound. There is no way for him to go out. So only by actually performing devotional service one can get freed from this shackles of modes. Even the best of all the three modes, which is sattva gun, is also quite binding, and one will get rid of that only by devotional service. That obviously will be discussed in the last section of this chapter. Yes, somebody can read this purport. Very nicely Srila Prabhupada has explained how a person in mode of goodness gets bound.
Yes, Prabhu. The difficulty here is that when a living entity is situated in the mode of goodness, he becomes conditioned to feel that he is advanced in knowledge and is better than others. In this way, he becomes conditioned. The best examples are the scientist and the philosopher. Each is very proud of his knowledge, and because they generally improve their living conditions, they feel a sort of material happiness. This sense of advanced happiness in conditioned life makes them bound by the mode of goodness of material nature. As such, they are attracted towards working in the mode of goodness. And as long as they have an attraction for working in that way, they have to take some type of body in the modes of nature. Thus, there is no likelihood of liberation or of being transferred to the spiritual world. Repeatedly, one may become a philosopher, a scientist, or a poet, and repeatedly become entangled in the same disadvantages of birth and death. But due to the illusion of material energy, one thinks that that sort of life is pleasant. Hare Krishna.
Yes. Thank you. So this is how Srila Prabhupada is summarizing everything by the example of these philosophers and scientists or poets, how they get bound and continue to exist as that, birth after birth. Next verse. Rajo ragatmakam vidhi
रजोरागात्मकं विद्धि
Krishna sanga samudbhavam
Krishna
Sangha
Samudbhavam
tannibadnati kaunteya
Nibhyanti Kaunteya
karma sangena dehinam.
Karma
Karma Sangena Dehinam.
The mode of passion is born of unlimited desire and longings, O son of Kunti. And because of this, the embodied living entity is bound to material, fruitive actions. Hare Krishna.
So, Rajogun, what it is comprised of? Ragatmakam. Atmakam means it is comprised of raga. And what is that raga? Attachment. Rajo ragatmakam vidhi Krishna sanga samudbhavam. And Krishna, attachment to Krishna, or we can say wanting to have something. What is this Krishna? Longings, as Prabhupada has translated. Longings, I want this, I want that, this kind of desires, longings. So he is attached to what? He is attached to things that he already possesses. I have this, I have that, he is attached to that. And Krishna is for those things which he wants to acquire. So in 16th chapter, we'll see the nature of demoniac people. They say that I have so much in wealth right now, and I will expand in this way and that way and get some more wealth in future. So because of this kind of feelings of attached to what he has, means he has to preserve his position, he has to preserve his things, he has to preserve his position in the society. So because of that, he has to work hard, you know. So that's why it is said, Tan nibadnati kaunteya karma sangena dehina. He has to work very hard for what? Maintaining his position of whatever he is in this society, you know. So that is how he is attached to his things. And at the same time, because he has Trishna for those things which he doesn't have, so that for that also he has to work, you know. So that is how the person who is in mode of passion, or we can say the mode of passion itself is full of unlimited desires and longings, and that is why the living entity keeps on working hard day and night. Just like in Bhagavatam verse it says aham mameti, you know, pumsasya mituni bhavam etad tayor grantimahu atha griha kshetra sutapta vittar nasya mohoyam aham mameti. That because of this entanglement or attachment to the opposite sex, you know, he is thinking that the all the paraphernalia and all the people or all the children, you know, all these things are mine, and I am very great, you know. So like this, the person feels. So all these things are nothing but the signs of mode of passion. So many times we hear this, that if somebody is very unwilling to work or not so inclined to work, they say that, you know, get him married, you know, then he will have to work, you know. So family life gives one impetus to work because of these kind of attachment as mentioned in Bhagavatam. So these knots are formed as soon as one person gets, you know, united with the opposite sex, and then he continues his life, and then he gets that kind of impetus to work hard, you know. So that is why the Rajogun, the characteristics mentioned is here is attachment and longingness for those things which he doesn't have, and because of that the person keeps working day and night hard. So we see Srila Prabhupada mentions that in the purport that formerly the advanced condition was considered in the mode of goodness, but currently the modern civilization is considered to be advanced in the standard of mode of passion. So we can see from this that actually when the definition of success is based on mode of passion, or lifestyle is based on mode of passion, then the definition of success becomes that, okay, I want more wealth, and I need these luxuries in life, you know, and I need all these opulences in my life, you know. So they are not worried about how they are getting that, you know. So the character is not very much important in this kind of society. Whereas when principally when the situation is, or advancement is defined based on the condition of mode of goodness, then all these other things are also considered. The character is valued, you know. People don't nowadays, what people say, I don't mind what the politicians are doing at their, you know, in their private life, but as long as I am getting my artha, my money and karma, my desires fulfilled, I don't care, you know, it's fine, okay, so what. But when the society is based on mode of goodness, then character is of utmost important, you know. So then the dharma, artha, kama and moksha all are given importance. So artha and kama are needed even in the civilization which has focus on mode of goodness, but that are used for moksha. As mentioned in Bhagavatam verse, that you may use your artha not for sense pleasures, na indriya priti yavo jiveta labata jivasya tattva jignasa nartho yascheh karmabhi kamasya indriya priti labho jiveta yavata. So one should not utilize the artha only for kama, but rather it should be utilized for attaining moksha by performing proper dharma. So this is what we can see, but the modern civilization is based on mode of passion, and because of that all their definitions are according to that. So that is why especially devotees have a great difficulty, because in the society we see there is so much of prevailing of mode of passion, and in devotional life we are trying to act on the level of goodness, so there is always this strife, and many times there is a difficulty on a sadhaka level to smoothly function in this material world. Yes, somebody can read this purport, part of the purport displayed on the screen.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes.
Therefore, the whole material world is more or less in the mode of passion. Modern civilization is considered to be advanced in the standard of mode of passion. Formerly, the advanced condition was considered to be in the mode of goodness. If there is no liberation for those in the mode of goodness, what to speak of those who are entangled in the mode of passion?
What is this meaning of the line, if there is no liberation for those in mode of goodness? Can anyone say?
Like you said, Prabhuji, even in mode of goodness, there is a binding. People are bound by the reactions or to the actions.
Correct.
So therefore,
Correct.
there is no liberation.
Exactly. So they are bound by what?
By the
Knowledge.
reactions to the
Knowledge and happiness.
good deeds.
Yes, knowledge and happiness. They are bound by the happiness and the knowledge. Yes, exactly. Then what to speak of others, who are entangled in the mode of passion? Yeah. Good. So let's go to the next verse. So now Krishna will introduce to us this tamogun. Tamastva-jnana-jam vidhi.
Tamastva-jnana-jam vidhi.
Mohanam sarvadehinam.
Mohanam sarvadehinam.
Pramadalasya nidrabhis.
Pramadalasya nidrabhis.
Tannibadnati bharata.
Tannibadnati bharata.
Translation.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. O son of Bharata, know that the mode of darkness born of ignorance is the delusion of all embodied living entities. The results of this mode are madness, indolence, and sleep, which bind the conditioned soul. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. So it's quite interesting here. Tamastu ajnana jam vidhi. So tamas is the mode of ignorance that we call, and ajnana is also ignorance. So in one sense, mode of ignorance is born out of ignorance. So tamastu ajnana jam vidhi. Understand, O Arjuna, that this mode of ignorance is born out of ignorance. And what does it is doing? Mohanam, whom it is mohanam. Mohanam means it is causing delusion. Delusion to whom? Sarvadehina, all living entities. And how does that delusion is caused? Pramad alasya nidrabhis.
Restore your chashma nikal. I got a dark spot removal serum for night, which will repair your face. See here. I use this now. Dark spot solution.
Can please somebody
Was like not by my foundation. Narska. Come here.
Hare Krishna.
Where's my headband?
Please mute all your mic, please. Yeah, thank you. So here we can see that Krishna is telling that mode of ignorance is born out of ignorance, and it is causing delusion to all the living entities. And the effect of this is pramada alasya nidra. Pramad is called as madness. Alasya is laziness or indolence, as Srila Prabhupada has said, and nidra is the sleep. And that is how the living entities are bound. So now this word is very, very important. This verse is very, very important, that tamastu ajnanajam vidhi mohanam sarvadehina. Now this is quite interesting. Till now Krishna has not talked about other modes in this way. But here Krishna has included sarvadehi. All the embodied souls, to be more specific. Dehi means embodied soul, those who have got body. They are deluded by this mode of ignorance. So we say that Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakya, that I am born in the darkness, So everyone in this material world who has taken birth in any kind of body is actually born in darkness. So that is in two sense. One is that this material world itself is dark, because there is no light of the spiritual world. Only the light is that of that reflected is through the sun, and that too is for the half of the day. The remaining half is dark itself. So that is one understanding. And second understanding is, one is born out of ignorance, is that he is having no knowledge. He is lost. He is not lost. The knowledge has been covered over, and that is how he is thinking himself to be, this body, that body, like that. So because of being born in ignorance and further acting in mode of ignorance, one complicates his situation. Just like we see that if somebody is in very great distress and he thinks that, okay, if I take some alcohol or drugs, then that will resolve my problem, solve my problem. So thinking like this itself is born of ignorance. Means he has no knowledge. He is thinking some solution which is going to actually complicate him, and he is thinking that is the very best solution. So when one further acts like that, then he further implicates himself in the ignorance. And many times we think that we can assign some particular mode to some person, but here Krishna is saying that mohanam sarvadehina, that this mode of ignorance is applicable to all. So why it is said like that? Because as we just now discussed, that first of all we are born ourselves in ignorance. Second thing is, this body is a sign of ignorance. Third thing, we can see that everyone needs to sleep, and one of the characteristic of ignorance is nidra. So now one may say that everybody needs to sleep. Yes, everybody needs to sleep. Those who are still not enlightened by the knowledge. One who are enlightened by knowledge of, especially of devotional service, he also sleeps, but he sleeps with the intention that tomorrow I'll be fit to do more services. So that is how we say that utilizing mode of ignorance in service of Krishna. But ignorance is there, sleep is needed, as long as the person living it is not enlightened or uplifted his consciousness much beyond the bodily level, he gets troubled if there is no sleep. I personally can very much vouch to this. If there is less sleep, then immediately it affects the next day's activities. But we can see even that those who are great souls in our sampradaya, so like 6 Goswamis, Nidra Hara Vihara Kadi Vijitau Chatyanta Dinau Chayo, that because they are so enlightened and beyond bodily concept, completely transcendental, so they could give up sleep, they could give up eating, so that means it's not that completely impossible without sleep, it is not possible. Yes, it is possible, but not for an ordinary person. So all this discussion, what we are talking about, or what Krishna is explaining us, is about a conditioned living entity. So he is not yet enlightened about any knowledge. How does he acts? What are the effects of the modes on him? That is all is explained here. But even if we see in the life of Srila Prabhupada, he would just sleep for very less time. Or there are some instances where disciples of Srila Prabhupada had noted that Prabhupada did not sleep whole night. He was completely absorbed in translations. Or even we see the life of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, as I explained previously also. It was quite fixed. At this particular, he would sleep and immediately in 2 or 3 hours he would get up. So how that can be possible is because of being situated on the transcendental level. But in essence, if we see in general thing, this mode of ignorance is common to all, at least in sense of the sleep, we can see. And then there are 2 other characteristics mentioned here is the pramad, that is madness, and alasya is the laziness. So this is how we see this mode of ignorance is acting. So Srila Prabhupada begins this purport with very wonderful way. He says, in this verse, the specific application of the word tu is very significant. This means that the mode of ignorance is very peculiar qualification of the embodied soul. So as I said, embodied soul means whoever is there who has got the body, the mode of ignorance is a peculiar quality or qualification for that. So in Sattva Gun we saw the quality was prakasham, and here it is mentioned ajnanajam. So it's a contrast, So if you see it here, 6th verse, tatra sattvam nirmalatvat prakasham anamayam, and whereas here it is mentioned that tamasastu ajnanajam vidhi mohanam and pramadalasya nidrabhi. So there is a quite big contrast between this mode of ignorance and mode of goodness. But externally, if you see, they appear to be same. So how that is, we'll see little bit later. But whole purpose of Krishna speaking these 3 verses is to introduce us to these 3 modes and how they are binding us. And the next verse tells that how the modes are actually binding the people. So Krishna will summarize the 3 modes in one verse itself. Sattvam sukhe sanjayati.
Sattvam sukhe sanjayati.
Rajah karmani bharata. Jnanam avrutya tu tamaha. Pramade sanjayatyuta. Translation.
Hare Krishna. O son of Bharata, the mode of goodness conditions one to happiness. Passion condition one to fruitive action, and ignorance, covering one's knowledge, binds one to madness. Hare Krishna.
Okay, thank you. So here we see that Sattvam Sukhe Sanjayati. It is bound to the happiness. This is how the Sattva Gun bounds one, the living entity. Passion bounds by fruitive action. So you remember how passion bounds to fruitive action, what we said about it? Can anyone recollect? How he is bound by the fruitive action or the karma?
Yes, Prabhuji. Hankering for more and longingness.
Yeah, and
Longingness, and it is for
attachment, whatever he has having. Whatever he is having. Yeah.
Rag
So
and Krishna. Yeah.
Correct. Exactly. These are the exact Sanskrit terminologies used by Krishna. Rag and Krishna. So he is attached to things what he already possesses, and because of that he is to keep them intact. He has to work, and he has longing for more things to acquire in his life, and because of that also he has to work. And tamasa, jnanam avrutya tu tamaha, knowledge is covered. So when one's knowledge is covered, then certainly he is bound to act in madness, and this kind of madness is not the terminology what we see of the people who are in the mental asylum, but acting in a self-destructive way because of lack of knowledge. Just like I give the example of alcohol. A person is in difficulty or problem and distress, and he feels that taking alcohol is a good solution. So actually it is a self-destructive way, both in terms of physical health and in terms of his spiritual upliftment. So that is how we see people. Or another example we can think of is some people think in distress, let us get rid from our distress by seeing some entertaining movies or something like that. So that is how they feel, and they try to forget their existence. But no, that by that they are actually complicating their life. Here we can see the example which is given in scriptures is of the ostrich, which is running out of the fear of tiger, and he feels that I will put my head into the earth, and when I put my head, I will no longer see the tiger, and then then there is no tiger, but that's not the case. Even if after that the tiger is able to see the ostrich, and he comes and eats it up. So similarly, this is the effect of the people who are in mode of ignorance. Yes. So before we go ahead, are there any questions? Or is everything clear about this? Fine. So no questions means everything is clear. So now next verse is talking about how these modes are competing with each other. Yes. Rajastamasascha vibhuya Sattvam bhavati bharata
Tvam bhavati bharata
Rajasattvam tamaschaiva
Rajasatvam tamaschaiva
Tamasattvam rajastatha.
Tamasatvam rajastatha.
Translation?
Hare Krishna,
Sometimes the
Prabhuji.
mode of Please continue, Mataji.
Yeah. Sometimes the mode of goodness becomes prominent, defeating the mode of passion and ignorance. O son of Bharata, sometimes the mode of passion defeats goodness and ignorance, and at other times, ignorance defeats goodness and passion. In this way, there is always competition for supremacy. Hare Krishna.
So this is how we can see that the three modes, they are always competing with each other. So one of the things to be understood about these three modes is, are they discrete or are they static? When we talk about they affecting us, so they are neither discrete nor static. They are completely dynamic. The discrete means what? If we see that in terms of the modes, then in themselves they are three. That is there. But how they are affecting us, that is completely dynamic. So, like we see that sometimes when early in the morning we get up and take bath, so we feel that okay, we are nicely in mode of goodness, and then we start chanting. So then suddenly we may feel sleepy. So then why we are feeling sleepy, although just now we had taken bath and everything was so good. So that is how we see that the modes are very dynamic. It is not that, although we also say that the morning time is in goodness. Okay, time is in that particular time is in goodness, but whether the person is in goodness or not, that is not known. So that is how modes act on us differently at different times. Or another example we can think of is if some class is going on, Bhagavatam class or something like that. Uh, so as soon as the class is starting, we may be in the mood that, oh, very nice, Bhagavatam is there. I should learn more and try to, engage more in the service of Krishna. And as the class is progressing ahead, uh, you know, we may want to sleep. We may feel tired, ki, oh, how long it's going on, when it will end. Or one may want to do something at that particular time, there's some restlessness, he wants to go out and do something. So in this way, we see that the modes are forcing the person to act in a particular way. So, so when we come to, or another way, we see that many times people they don't want to too much work hard, So they think that if I take to spiritual life, I will be able to relax. But the point is that relaxation doesn't comes out of inactivity, but rather it comes in relaxation comes when actually the purification of the heart happens. So a person doesn't understand this, and he feels that, okay, if I take to spiritual life, then everything will be relaxed, So not like that. So that is how we see that the modes are continuously having a battle over each other. And when the Rajas is prominent, he defeats both other modes. Or when Sattva prominent, then he defeats other two modes. And when Tamaha prominent, then he defeats other two modes. And in this way, we can also see that sometimes people have the biggest conflict in their life is about indecisiveness, not able to take decisions, maybe for their career or job or choosing spouse. So like that, people are indecisive, and sometimes they keep dragging on in that sense. Now we can, if we really closely want to understand the difference between ignorance and goodness, this is a very good example. Because when person is in ignorance, then he keeps dragging on, whereas the person who is in mode of goodness, he is very much thoughtful. So externally, if we see, the person who is dragging on is inactive, not taking any decision, and a person in mode of goodness is also inactive and not taking decision. But who is in ignorance, he is not thoughtful about what is going to happen, what are the consequences. He is simply indecisive because of not having proper understanding or not having knowledge. But the person who is in mode of goodness, he has knowledge and he is thoughtful. Okay, if I take this choice, then this is the consequence of this. If I take that choice, that is the consequence. He lists them out, he discusses it with others, and in that period it appears that he's indecisive, but his indecisive is backed up with this kind of thoughtfulness. So that is why it is a mode of goodness. So in essence, if we want to see these three modes, then goodness can be called as where person is contemplative and active, because it does something after that. Passion, the person is only active. There is no contemplation. He doesn't worry what will be the consequence of anything. He is simply acting to fulfill his desires and to procure more things in life. And ignorance, person is neither active nor contemplative. So this is how we see that externally the goodness and ignorance, they may appear same. And similarly, just like we spoke about the Bhagavatam class example. So if the persons are there, three persons are there, so one of the person may say, oh, I have so many things to do, so there is no time for me to hear Bhagavatam class, and he may just leave and do some activity, which is obviously in some kind of in purview of Krishna consciousness or devotional service. But then there are different times to do different things. At the time of Bhagavatam, we hear Bhagavatam. We do service at the time of service. Obviously, there may be some services like data service which has to be done at the time of Bhagavatam, but we are not talking about those. We are talking about those services which can be done at other times also. Hare Krishna, am I audible?
Yes, Prabhu.
Because it just flashed me a message that internet connection is unstable. So then another person, so then other two people, are you all? Is it audible?
Yeah,
Now
you are
it's
audible.
breaking,
Prabhuji.
Prabhuji.
Video is not
Some-
working. You are clearly
Just
audible,
talk to-
Prabhuji.
Yeah, now voice is also breaking.
Okay, fine. So then I spoke about one person who is feeling that he doesn't want to attend, he just simply goes away. And there are other two people who are sitting there, and externally both of
I think now we are not able to hear Prabhuji's voice.
Hare Krishna, am I audible now?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. Yeah, so I was saying that how this the person is doesn't want, he's restless and he just want to leave Bhagavatam class. And there may be other two people who are sitting in the class, but one of them is sleeping, and other person is whatever he's hearing, he's thinking about that. So like this, the different modes are acting differently on the different people. But when we talk about these modes, they have their own levels. That ignorance is the lowest, passion is better, goodness is the best, and beyond that is the transcendence. But when we talk about their acting upon us, then any of the mode can act anytime. So again, the example of chanting, as we discussed, we are chanting means it is in goodness. We sit and chant, but if we feel tired, then suddenly ignorance attacks and we want to sleep. So one may try to avoid into going into ignorance by going into passion. So one may start walking instead of simply going to sleep. So that is how it protects, because we know that mode of ignorance is of lower strata. So better instead of going to ignorance directly, better is we go into passion. So by going into passion and walking and chanting, may not be that attentive as while sitting and chanting, but at least we are giving importance to uttering the holy name of the Lord. So this is like we see that if we are walking on a crossroad, and when we reach at a crossroad, we see that the plates written here is this road going, this road is going in this way, and we choose based on our destination where we want to go. And then after long time, there is another fork. There also we see, okay, this way, that way, and then we choose. But just imagine it at every step, if there is a fork wherein we have to choose where to go, then what it will be. So it is actually, this situation is there for the living entity, the embodied soul, in this conditioned material world, but he is not aware. He is completely making even the choices based on his modes. So he is that's why in Bhagavatam the example is given of the bull who is controlled by the noose. So that is the situation of living entity. But which living entity? Again, we have to understand. Krishna is also talking about here Dehinam. those who are embodied conditioned souls. But as and when we acquire this knowledge, or we get to practice this process of devotional service, and as we uplift our consciousness, then we start to understand that we have choice. And certainly it is not that easily possible that we can immediately make. That's why in the 13.22 purport we saw that progressively and gradually, which were the words used by Srila Prabhupada in the purport, that by practicing, by submitting oneself to the process of hearing, one progressively and gradually transcends this mode. So like that. So we saw that in this verses 6, 7 and 8, Krishna introduced us to these three modes, and 9th he gave summary of all the three modes. 10th he explained us what is the conflict between these three modes, and then in next 3 verses we'll see what happens, what are the changes in the living entity when this type of conflict happens. Okay, so we'll end over here. So are there any questions so far on this subject matter?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandat Pranam.
Dandavat.
Prabhuji, I have one question. I heard that some devotees who are really advanced, no matter when they sleep, they could wake up around 3:30, 3 o'clock and do their sadhana without disturbance. So since we were discussing about sleep, I would like to know how can we try to do it, or will it only happen after we do a lot of sadhana and purify ourselves?
So just as I just now repeated the words of Srila Prabhupada from 13.22, it is gradually and progressively. Just like how did we come to chanting of 16 rounds? Gradually and progressively, isn't it? So similarly, we can always aspire to reach that stage, but it is not going to happen in one night or even in 1 month or something. We can aspire for it and plan our life in such a way that we can sleep early. And first of all, we can plan first of all in this way that we sleep early and get up early. So at least we cover 6 hours in such a way that we get good sleep. And then eventually this will happen that whenever we sleep, we may get up, early in the morning, because that is how then the body gets accustomed to. And then obviously not just the body, but then upliftment of the consciousness. So as you mentioned about the advanced devotees, yes, because their consciousness is advanced, so then for them even the less number of hours of sleep doesn't matter, because they are completely out of the bodily consciousness. And then I also explained the example of Goswamis, where Nidra Hara Vihara Kadi Vijitau, they completely conquered over, that is the word here, Vijitau. They conquered over sleep and eating. So we see Raghunath Das Goswami, he was eating in buttermilk once in 3 days. That is only a handful, that also. So nothing of this can be imitated, because if we imitate, we will simply get great trouble for ourselves. So always we should follow these things, or aspire to follow these things, and follow according to what is our current situation. And eventually, as and when we purify our consciousness, and then gradually it will automatically happen. We don't have to do any artificial thing for that. Is that okay?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Any other question? Okay. So thank you all very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we are meeting on next Monday now. Friday there will be no class.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very
Hare
much,
Krishna.
Prabhu. Hare
Thank you.
Krishna, Dandavat.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much,
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna,
Hare
Dandavat.
Krishna.